Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another edition of Post Fight. And in this edition of Post Fight, I'll be doing Post Fight UFC Fight Night, Luque versus Dos Anjos. And for this card, I went 10-3 or 10 of 13. So 10 wins, 3 losses, real good card. You can say whatever you want to say. 10 wins, 3 losses is a good card, no matter what everything you try to say or whatnot, that's a good card. And that's all I'm gonna say about that. So went 10-3. And with the typical theme of this video is to focus on the losses, and that's what I'll do. With 3 losses, I'm first mention the win, and not purely just because of a win. Matter of fact, it's really not all because of the win, but it's just me, highlighting the fighter who I kind of doubted early on in his, obviously his last fight. Not obviously, he only had 2 fights, but it's not even that early on. I'm talking like he 5 years into his UFC career, and I'm like, I doubted him early on, and now this guy's champion. I mean, I doubted him last week, then I leaned to him this week, and he looked good. That's basically what it really is. So I doubted him last week. I mean, it wasn't really last week, but in the concept of time, it was very recent, his last fight. So he had one fight, came in, and he won when I picked against him. I was really high on him for what I seen. And looked good in that win. Then he looked even better in this win. He still hasn't really fought no super good competition just yet in the UFC, but I'm impressed with him from what I've seen from him. Like I say, you don't necessarily have to fight the best competition, especially when you're already fighting at the highest level of the sport. You don't have to necessarily fight the best competition for people to see, the stuff in you that oh, he could go pretty far. He could go further than I thought. And who I'm talking about is Marcus McGee. And he looked good in this fight. I really liked the way he picked his punches pretty well. I liked how controlled he was. Like, he didn't need to go for any little extra damage. Like, he just, I knew I caught him clean. I knew he was out. Knew he didn't know where he was at. And he didn't do nothing. Like, spoke well for himself, and was well spoken after the fight. I liked everything about him and his performance, like his walkout, his technique, his movement, and even like if JP Bays didn't really even go for a takedown, I liked the way he moved. A lot of guys just move like he moved straight back. Like I say, he was bouncing on his toes. He was giving little feints here. Even he's doing a bunch of different feints. So a lot of foot movement, and he wasn't just in there just moving like a robot, like moving one way, move the other way, move straight back, like very predictable. Like even if JP Bays wanted to go for takedowns, he wasn't making himself a stationary target. He wasn't making the takedowns easy, even so. Maybe if he was just going straight back with his hands down, he would have left himself open for overhand rights or left himself open for somebody easily 1-2 and then double leg him. But he wasn't doing that. He was actually moving, circling, giving out feints and switching stances. He was looked very smooth, and a lot of guys should actually incorporate. That's how you actually defend takedowns without even having to actually sprawl. I'm not saying you don't have to sprawl. Eventually, some guys gonna get aggressive and go for that, but that's how you move. Not how what's his name? Justin Gaethje went against Khabib. That's how you don't do it. Just doing a whole bunch of unnecessary motion and tying yourself out instead of actually smooth and actually moving with purpose. Because when Gaethje did for Khabib, that's how you don't go against a guy that's trying to rush you. That's terrible. At all, that's terrible. But I like what I saw from him. It was nice and good performance. Obviously, JP Bays ain't no super stud or nothing. He's a solid kid or whatnot, solid fighter. But obviously the results ain't been shown up for him. But yeah, it's all enough. And Marcus McGee went out there and made it look easy. And again, did it with composure, did it with control. Didn't go for no extra follow punch. So shout out to Marcus McGee, solid performance. And that's pretty much the only when I'm on document, and I'm on a document main event. But yeah, now into the L's, the 3 L's. So the first L was Isaac Dogarian versus Francis Marshall. And this is not even gonna be a loss. Matter of fact, all the losses probably on this card, I ain't gonna really be sweating too much or really learning from, because there's really not a whole lot to learn from them. The Isaac Dogarian fight versus Francis Marshall. I knew Isaac Dogarian was good and stuff. I knew he had a lot of talent, but I can't just hop on talent. Even look at Amarin. She looked good this performance, but I kind of got on her too early in her last fight against Sam Hughes. Oh, she's this, she's that. And then, like I said, it was another case of a fighter who looked good. On paper should have been a better fighter. Had at least decent results and stuff. And she just fought tomato cans outside the UFC, so she looked real solid. And everything lined up, but she would seem to be, finishing all her opponents pretty quickly. And you thought she'd do the same to Sam Hughes, and she did almost do that to Sam Hughes, but nonetheless, she looked good but faded. And the same thing could have happened to Isaac Dogarian on paper leading up to this fight. And it's not like he was going there with a guy who couldn't wrestle or a guy that was tailor made for him to beat. Francis Marshall seemed to have decent wrestling. He was more experienced. He was younger, so younger and more experienced, more well-rounded on paper. It seemed like the better overall fighter and again the more tested fighter. So a guy coming in like that only had really first round finishes over tomato cans. I couldn't really get behind it. Like I knew Isaac Dogarian was good because I actually was picking him in his fight that he was originally supposed to have in his debut. Because I know the guy he was going in with originally primarily just was wrestling. I seen that guy get wrestled up by Damon Jackson. So I was like, yeah, if Damon Jackson could wrestle you up like that, I think Isaac Dogarian has a path to victory. I think Dogarian's a better wrestler than him. And I don't think that guy striking was all that good either. So I feel like it's kind of a more wrestling matchup and Dogarian's the better wrestler. And seemingly the better striker. So like that was a good matchup for him. But then he went in there with um, Francis Marshall and made it look easy. And I guess the thing that we didn't see is we haven't seen Francis Marshall get taken down really, and we haven't seen Francis Marshall get put on his back. And we saw Dogarian do it, and he had great success doing it. Made it look very easy. So Dogarian looks like a beast. I am not gonna get like super high on him, but I'm definitely gonna have my eye on him. And definitely, I don't feel like they're gonna rush him along and try to just throw him into the deep end. So he probably gonna be able to get at least 2-3 more fights on a winning streak, like win 2-3 more fights, like, and maybe even be high confidence from me in those next coming fights. But he looked good, and he definitely could beat all the people that are around Francis Marshall level and probably dominate them. But it's the thing if they try to throw him farther ahead, then that could be the issue. But at this level, I think he can thrive, develop, and it's not like he's going to take 5 years at this level to fight the top 15 guys. But I think maybe a year, get like a 2-fight, 3-fight winning streak, and then start to maybe try to fight the top 30 and top 15 and such. But he looked good. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna say top 30, top 15. It's not lightweight division. So lightweight, that would be, you need some more fights. Is this lightweight division? I'm trying to think. Anyway, he needs a couple more fights. All I'm saying, but he looks good. He looked great. And do I feel bad about that pick? No, I didn't bet on the pick. I knew how good he could be potentially. Like that concerned me. That's why my confidence was low there. I knew how much potential he could potentially have, and he clearly showed he has all that potential and more. So I just went low confidence Marshall because again, like the paper for me was leaning to Francis Marshall, but I knew the talent of Dogarian was something to monitor. But yeah, leaned against him, low confidence, but ultimately just stayed away from the fight on the betting side because I knew how good he could be. But so I don't feel bad about the one. And I think ultimately over the long course of things, like multiple fights, I think that's just a better track record to kind of fade those guys, or at least just avoid them on the betting side. Because at the end of the day, it's about making the smart plays, hold them, know when to hold them, know when to fold them, and yeah, I think it's better just to fold them and just not play that one. For me personally, I think over the long run, it's better than I get all caught up in potential hype trains until they really test themselves. But he looked good, and that's all I'm gonna say for that one. So the first L, second L was Tafon Nchukwi versus Dobson. I forget his name, AJ Dobson. So Nchukwi versus AJ Dobson. It was a very close fight. You're dealing with two fighters who have been pretty inconsistent. Nchukwi, I think, was like 1-3 in his last 4 fights or something like that, or 2-4 or something like that. Not the best record in the last fight. And AJ Dobson, I think, was 0-2 in the UFC. Although Nchukwi, I didn't like the fact he was coming back to 185. But I feel he would be the better striker overall. He's typically a high volume fighter, but in this one, he decided to try to go for the knockout. And he hasn't really shown to be much of a knockout artist, or really that guy that's like hit connect you and drop you, to be honest. So I think the strategy kind of backfired on him. I still thought he could have won the fight. Do I think it was like robbery or anything like that? No, I think it was a very close fight. Congrats to AJ Dobson, and he also was the one who made weight, so congrats to him for winning. Close fight. But I guess his volume and takedowns was able to edge the fight from. So close fight. Not mad at the decision at all. And I think Nchukwi kind of get away from his strengths in this one and try to do something different. And the difference didn't work out, and the judges didn't feel it either. So he tried to do different. It didn't work out. The judges didn't work out for the judges either, and they gave it to AJ Dobson. But just based on paper, is it a bad decision to lean to Nchukwi as far as in hindsight, or not hindsight, but in the I guess he's trying to just pick a close enough fight like that, like really a pick 'em fight like that. Just throw a dog out there potentially, that could be the angle. But yeah, I saw AJ Dobson wasn't necessarily the most technical striker, at least in his fights prior to this one. And he kind of just a lot of times forces punches or forced finishes out there. And I thought Nchukwi would be to outvalue him. I thought Nchukwi would actually be the one throwing more kicks, but actually Dobson was the one throwing more kicks. But yeah, ultimately just a very, very close fight. I can't feel too bad about it. And on paper, Nchukwi and statistically, Nchukwi, like actually visual tests, Nchukwi from his fights looked like the more technical fighter. In stat wise, more technical fighter and more volume. But again, he switched his thing up and tried to go for knockouts instead of the volume. And actually, it was Dobson, the one who was piling up more volume than him. But again, close fight. But Dobson got his hand raised. But is that a bad pick, bad decision? Not necessarily. So don't feel too bad about it when it's not a whole lot to take from that one, except that definitely I see that Eddie Dobson is evolving. He's getting better with each fight, so that's a good thing for him. And somebody might see this fight and say, "Oh, I'm gonna fade him in the next fight," but that's not the case. I think Eddie Dobson is a sleeper. I'm not saying a sleeper to take over the division, but he's definitely a sleeper that he gonna upset a lot of the people around his level, and maybe a little bit above his level right now. And he still could actually have a pretty high ceiling and a promising career in the UFC, and and be able to turn that 0-2 start around and end up being like 5-2 or something. So the guy got potential. Big, young, strong, got a lot of power, a lot of natural gifts. So he got a high ceiling. And Chukwi, I think he could have a high ceiling as well and a lot of potential. But I think ultimately, from my perspective, I keep saying ultimately. I don't know why I just fall in love with certain words and I can't stop saying them. But ultimately, but yeah. For Chukwi, this is like no shade or no hatred or no nothing like that. Actually, this is me seeing a fighter that, I see he has a lot of talent, a lot of potential, a lot of skill and whatnot. And, just kind of, skidding right here. Like now he would like 1-4 his last 5 fights. And I thought this could be a fighter that could, really triumph and thrive in the UFC. But got pushed along too soon. I think ultimately got pushed along too soon. And could have piled some more fights, I think. And got better to learn from the experience and again got better. But my advice I would feel I think at this point, if the UFC not gonna really just give him easy matchups to develop, maybe give him like 3 tomato cans, give him like a Prashnio, give him like a Dalkis or something, either brother, give him fights like that. Give him an old legend that's like 40 years old or something like that. Let's give him fights like that. Just let him go and give him the PFL. Let him go in PFL. I think he could become a champion PFL. I think it's the right format and I think it's the right skill level. And he could develop in there and maybe come back in 2 years and be a whole different fighter. Now he probably maybe come back with that $1 million, that $1 million check or whatnot. And a couple probably, stack up some money from just the fight to fight and then win the championship and come back with $1 million and come back a whole new fighter. And yeah, I think PFL could be a good route for him. Could be a very good route for him. But I think right now the UFC can be very toxic to him. I think it has been a bit toxic to him, at least record-wise. I know the UFC is going to be itching to cut him or not going to be doing him any favors by try to give him an easier fight. They're going to probably give him another hard fight or cut him. So, yeah, I think PFL probably the better route. Bellator could be decent, but Bellator sometimes they drag you around. They let you be around 10 years before you get a title shot, and you be like a 40-year-old prospect. Like, damn, I finally got a title shot after 10 years. Like, I've been in this organization forever. Yes, they gave me the tomato cans I needed. Give me like 2 tomato cans a year, but it took me 10 years to get to a title shot. And like now you're ready for the championship. So like they would be dragging a lot of their prospects along way too long before they get title shots, or before they really start getting contenders. Look at Michael Venom Page. That man for so long before he started fighting top contenders in the weight in Bellator. He just literally started fighting like 2-3 years ago, and he been in Bellator since I was in college, like back in 2011. Well, that was when I was a freshman in college. But yeah, 2011. Like he probably been in Bellator before in like 2010, and then he started getting big fights to like real big fights to like 2020, 2019. So that's a long time. Like I said, I'm not even exaggerating. That's how they be typically. But yeah, that's the second L. Third L was Hakeem Dawood versus Cub Swanson, and this one was just a bad decision. Like, what can I really say? Just a bad decision. But on Hakeem Dawood's side, you're the younger fighter. You're supposed to be this. You're supposed to be that. There's no way. Even if Cub Swanson is getting a whole new strength and conditioning coach, he's going to the massage parlor 2 times a week and getting hand jobs and whatnot. You should not be struggling this much against him. It should be an easier fight. Not to say, oh, it's this or that, but Cub Swanson's still a very good fighter. He ain't no pushover, but that like to be at this level, you got to be like a hungry dog or something. Like you see these older fighters that's come around, they just on vacation trying to add to their legacy. You got to kill them. It ain't about well, I'm coasting to a decision, or I'm just gonna eke a fight out by 1 minute of control time or landing 5 more punches. Now you got to knock them out, tap them out, or just put on a striking clinic on them, land like 80 significant strikes more than them or something. Like you can't just be out there having a close fight with them. It definitely was a bad decision. I don't feel like at any point it's no good decision. For Custom One, it's not no real. It was clearly a bad decision, but also it's not smart or even like what you should be aiming to do against a fighter that much older than you and who has that much mileage on him. So, yeah, the wrong guy won. But at the end of the day, Hakeem Dawood should never have even gave the judges the opportunity to rob the fight from him. But yeah, so. Another fight I don't feel bad about. Matter of fact, that's literally the fight I don't feel. I feel something a little bit about the other two fights, but this fight, this is a bad decision. But again, with Hakeem Dawood, you got to know better. Like matter of fact, they always say, even in fights like with younger fighters and fighters both in their prime and this and that and big fights and whatnot, they say that. But I think especially you going to with an older fighter, you can't be out there just eking out close decisions or competitive decisions. It should not be competitive. And again, I don't care what they do. I don't care if they got TRT. I don't care if they getting leg extensions. I don't care if they injecting steroids. You got to put them out. Or you got to dominate them. You got to set a clear gap. Like, yes, you were good then, but you aren't who you were then. And I'm at the peak of my career now, and you are not. So I'm going to show you the peak, and I'm going to show you the door. That's what it got to be. It can't be this whole, yeah. Yeah, it was a terrible decision. And now main event, Vicente Luque versus Rafael Dos Anjos. So that was the end of my L's. And now in the main event, I got this one right. Luque didn't get it done in the distance, but I think he did what he had to do to win. I think it was a clear decision. In reality, I feel like he probably won 4 rounds to 1, but I think 2 of the judges had it 3 rounds to 2, but I feel like 4-1. But hey, the right man won. No robbery, no bad decisions, just the right man won. And Luque did what he had to do. Like I thought he could get a finish, but clearly I think even if the punches of RDA was kind of, punches and kicks of RDA were still kind of having effect on him, maybe he was still a little bit, feeling some type of way about in the brain. Like his brain's probably still scrambled a little bit. Well, I'm not going to say that, but I don't know whether it still has effect on him. I mean, it obviously has some physical effect on him. It's not like he just had a stroll through the park. It had some physical, that brutal TKO loss to Jeff Neal had some effect on him. And, he's trying to return and come back. I think he came back pretty soon. So he probably still a little bit rattled, and he definitely felt it when he did get hit by RDA punches. And RDA is typically not a one-punch knockout artist anyway. He don't have no light hands, but he's typically not a one-punch knockout artist or typically a heavy-handed fighter. But yeah, Luque fought a smart fight. He fought a safe fight, and he got the victory. He showed some improvements in the grappling department and the wrestling department. That's a good thing. But ultimately, it was a boring fight that he did what he needed to do. He didn't take too many risks because, again, like he don't want to risk getting knocked further down the ladder by some journeyman. I mean, not journeyman, by some, what I'm trying to say, not journeyman. RDA is far from a journeyman, but he didn't want to get knocked down by a 40-year-old former champion. That's the way to say it. You don't want to go out and get knocked out by, I guess you could say a has-been. You got to at least beat the has-been. He did what he had to do. Like, it wasn't the most pretty performance, at least from the striking aspect, or at least from the finishing aspect, or at least given that he's a 31-year-old guy going in with a 40-year-old guy. So a guy sitting right in his prime. But he also, like, you got to keep in mind, he is coming off a brutal knockout loss. And he just did what he had to do to avoid taking much damage and also avoid getting clipped and concussed more or end up getting knocked out. And he took the safer route. Like, could he have fought a fight, not a crazy fight, but a more risky fight, took more risks and won and got a finish? Definitely. But also in taking those risks, you could take more damage, take more years over your career, and potentially get knocked out, finished, or something like that. Especially given the fact you are returning after taking a brutal knockout loss or a brutal TKO loss. So he did what he had to do, but to focus on what the performance really means, it don't really mean a whole lot. I think the other people in the weight class are, the people that higher up than him. I think it's a performance they don't really care too much about. They're like, oh, he looked good in the rest department, but like, yeah, whatever. It ain't really gonna shake the weight class. That's all I'm saying. It didn't shake the weight class up. People above him not really worried about it. The people below him probably smelling blood a little bit, but they're like kind of holding off a little bit. Like, he still got it, but still see the vulnerability in him. So those people still licking their chops to get him a chance at him and probably try to beat him. People above him ain't too worried about him, ain't too interested about him. Unless maybe they coming off a loss, they like, oh, that's a potential person I could fight to get me back or to hold my space if I beat him. To either get me back or to hold my space. That's basically what they kind of saying him is if they do lose. That's where he's kind of in that position. But as far as people winning up above him, they have no thoughts of him because that performance was, again, just a performance to get by. Like, he did what he had to do to get the win. And it's as simple as that. He did what he had to do to get the win, but he didn't impress no one. He didn't shake up the division. He didn't show no real, like, threatening improvement. Like, he didn't look. He just did a get by performance. So that's about all I can say for that one. But yeah, went 10-3, 10-3, 10 of 13, 10 wins, 3 losses, solid card. Not a whole lot to really take from this card. A couple people that like look pretty good. And yeah, that's the video. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and come back for more videos. Peace.